Things are seriously picking up in Chainsaw Man right now with chapter 133. It just seems like Fujimoto has his foot permanently on the gas right now, with the last 4 or 5 chapters being straight up non-stop action, and it's very reminiscent of part 1, where all these things are happening back to back to back and we have almost no time to breathe and digest anything that's going on. For example, in the previous chapter, just after finishing the Falling Devil arc, we get hit with this massive twist when Yoshida kidnaps Denji and Nayuta, and it was left very much in the air exactly what Yoshida's intentions were. Up until this point, it's been very difficult to gauge whether Yoshida is on the good side or the bad side, and what exactly his actions behind the scenes have been kind of leading towards. He's always super expressionless, and the organization that he works for is still completely shrouded in mystery. Well, one of those things changes in this chapter, but before I get ahead of myself, as I said in the previous chapter, Yoshida kidnapped Denji and Nayuta, kind of putting them on lockdown for some specific reason, and we don't find that reason out in that chapter. Well, we kind of get an answer to that in this one, because we surprisingly open up with Denji and Yoshida sitting at this cafe outside, watching this crowd of protesters. Yoshida points out that these are people protesting in front of public safety, demanding that Chainsaw Man get treated as a devil and eliminated. What's also very interesting is that there's another group of people kind of harassing these protesters, these people being followers of Chainsaw Man that are actually more than likely part of a Chainsaw Man church. Well, it seems pretty obvious that Yoshida's trying to point out to Denji the societal issue that Chainsaw Man is starting to become, where he's heavily dividing the general public, and what Yoshida's true intention here is to get Denji to see the trouble that Chainsaw Man is causing in order to keep him from turning into Chainsaw Man, which for some reason has been his main goal this entire time, and we're kind of starting to see exactly why that is. And another very interesting portion of the conversation between Denji and Yoshida here that I feel like is setting up some major ramifications down the line is when Yoshida mentions that this Church of Chainsaw Man that's existing right now has currently seen a surge of younger members and is actually approaching 20,000 total members. It seems like younger people are kind of joining for the hell of it because it's like trendy or something, and since they're future voters, politicians are doing what politicians do and try to pander to this younger generation in order to get their vote later on, right? So many politicians are actually starting to supply the Church of Chainsaw Man and supporting it in that way, meaning the Church of Chainsaw Man not only is getting the numbers, but it's also getting some straight up government support from some politicians. So as Yoshida kind of foreshadows in this conversation, things are kind of manageable right now, but they can get a lot worse. And I feel like this is kind of foreshadowing that, because as we can see, there's a lot of people that are very unhappy that Chainsaw Man is kind of acting as a vigilante and does what he wants, and other people that passionately follow what he does. So there's more than likely going to come a time in the manga where all of this boils over and there's just straight up chaos amongst people. So it kind of makes you wonder if the prophecy of Nostradamus doesn't just exclusively mean the gates of hell opening and all these devils coming to completely devour humanity and stuff. A big part of the apocalypse might be humanity's own fault, where society slowly starts losing more and more control and all hell raises loose just before the actual apocalypse happens. Denji, being Denji though, says that it's kind of nice having these people fight over you, having these people fight the protesters for him, and Yoshida just comes at him straight and says, hey look, you've said you wanted to live a normal life before, this is your opportunity to do so. All I'm asking you is to not become Chainsaw Man anymore, and you can go on and live your daily life with Nayuta and just live like a regular 16 or 17-year-old kid. And he's not wrong, that is what Denji wanted for the most part for a good portion of the series, but Denji seems to refuse to let go of the fame that being Chainsaw Man has brought him, and it really shouldn't come as a surprise, because if you guys remember at the end of part 1, when Denji was hiding out with Kishibe and Kobeni in that dark dreary room, this is when Denji had his big character arc. This is when Denji realizes that he doesn't just want the bare minimum, he wants everything that life has to offer. He's sick of just scraping by and getting the bare necessities. He wants to eat steak, he wants to have multiple girlfriends, he wants to live life to the fullest. That's kind of the big change that Denji's character had at the end of part 1. So again, it's not very surprising that it's carrying over into part 2, with Denji refusing to let go of the celebrity lifestyle that he now has as Chainsaw Man. Well, Yoshida, again being as blunt as possible, says to Denji, well look, if you want to be Chainsaw Man, then that means that public safety will kill Nayuta. And he specifically says that they'll bring Nayuta back as a corpse, like as pretty straightforward of a threat as you can get. He's essentially trying to make Denji choose here, either have a normal life with Nayuta or become Chainsaw Man and cause some major trouble for society and for himself. And Denji just refuses to let being Chainsaw Man go, but he also obviously doesn't want to let Nayuta die, so he has a very hard time deciding. He insists and chooses both choices, and this is when Yoshida kind of loses it, and it's the first time we've ever seen Yoshida show any type of like anger or anxiety society, anything other than his even keeled face that he always has, that like little weird creepy smile that he always carries. And I think it's pretty nice, and another development of Yoshida's character, seeing him just actually act super frustrated with Denji like anybody else probably would. Well, it's any logical person. Like, I feel like the only other time he's shown any real expression is when he's straight up like getting chucked out of a window by Quan Chi, and even then he's not as flustered as he is now in this chapter. So he's getting mad at Denji for not getting it. He's either telling him to stop being Chainsaw Man or Nayuta is going to die, and he just refuses to accept an option. He even goes as far as to call on the Chainsaw Man fans that are harassing the protesters to come and kill Yoshida, and Yoshida kind of gets a chuckle out of this, thinking like, man, this guy really is that stupid, huh? But it turns out that Denji standing his ground actually pays off, because out of nowhere you hear someone calling Denji's name in the distance, and it turns out to be none other than Nayuta and the dogs. Yoshida seems pretty pissed because apparently this was all kind of like a setup, and he was never intending on killing Nayuta, and was kind of assuming that Denji would just choose the first option, which is to stop being Chainsaw Man and let Nayuta live, which in my opinion continues to develop the character of Yoshida and what his intentions are, because many speculate that he's kind of on the bad side, he's doing these evil things behind the scenes. But after this sequence, it made me kind of realize that what Yoshida's been doing up until this point, trying to boss Denji around, kidnapping him, trying to keep Asa away from him, really just is for his own safety and for the public safety. It doesn't seem like there's any weird malicious intent behind it where he's secretly working with devils or something. This chapter definitely gave me like an Aki and Denji vibe, where Aki just can't believe how stupid Denji's acting, and it kind of makes me hope that Yoshida becomes a more reoccurring friend or character in the manga, even more than he is right now, and he kind of opens up a little bit more and becomes, you know, the Aki of part 2 or something similar. It almost seems like Nayuta is kind of like the power of part 2, where she's like super bossy and demanding and pretty much tries telling Denji what to do, things like that. So I think it'd be a pretty nice pairing for part 2. Well, as Denji and Nayuta reunite, Yoshida makes one last attempt to get Denji to come to his senses and says, look, if you turn into Chainsaw Man, they will kill Nayuta. And he's referring to public safety here. Well, Nayuta hears this and obviously isn't happy about it, so she's like, Denji, tell this guy to F off and let's go home. And that's pretty much what he does. He says, you know what, forget what you're saying, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna do what I want. There's definitely a lot to unpack in this chapter here, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and turn those notifications on if you enjoy Chainsaw Man content like this, because I post it each and every week, so you'll always have enough of it here. That is it for this one though. Have an absolutely wonderful night or morning, whatever, and I'll see you guys in the next one.